Hey, everybody, welcome back to the On the Right Side podcast, coming to you from the America First Warehouse here in Long Island, New York, as we do every Wednesday at 2 p.m. live. Normally, I would have David Zare here from Real America's Voice as my co-host. He's on assignment in Washington. But we have a lot to talk about, so many things that have occurred over the last week. And we're going to get into them, especially in the last two segments of the hour, where I talk with one of the partners I have at the Center for Cost-Effective Government, of which I serve as the executive director. And speaking of that think tank, I have been trying to get this think tank to educate the public as to ways that we can control cost, control taxes, and make this region, the state, and the nation more affordable. There are a lot of elected officials out there who are talking a good game about affordability, but a lot of them are a bunch of charlatans. They talk a good game, but they vote for every spending item that comes down the pike. And by the way, it's often on both sides of the aisle. Democrats are worse, but some of the Republicans are often not as bad, but pretty bad themselves. There are a number of fiscal hawks out there who we really idolize, but not enough of them. So my center has come to the conclusion that it's really difficult to get elected officials to pass legislation that's against their self-interest. So I've been thinking, along with our special guest today, of ways that we can go around the elected officials and maybe go through the judicial process to help taxpayers. And on that note, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce our guest today. He's a constitutional scholar, an attorney, Philip Howard, the executive director of another think tank called The Common Good. And Philip, I want to welcome you to our show, and I can't wait to get into it. Welcome, Philip Howard.
It's great to be with you, Steve.
So I mentioned to the folks out there that we became acquainted when I saw you on a C-SPAN interview after one of your many books was published. And I'd like you to talk about your most recent book, or perhaps the one before that, where you had the idea of seeking litigation to ban what is one of the most egregious conflicts of interest that exist in American politics today. And by that, I'm talking about the process whereby municipal unions give political donations to the very elected officials who will then turn around and negotiate their contracts and sign off on all of these government documents that benefit the union. You and I both think this is an egregious conflict of interest that is violative of different clauses within the Constitution, and I know our listening public is dying to hear your take on this and how we can take this out. Go, it's all yours. Philip Howard.
First of all, you're right. And what's amazing is that first of all, unions only got the power of collective bargaining really almost as an afterthought during the 1960s rights revolution. Well, trade unions, car workers can unionize. Why can't public workers? But people didn't realize that there was an essential difference, that if the auto workers bargain too much, they'll lose their jobs. The jobs will go overseas, or the company will go out of business. Government can't go out of business. And so what we've had is for 50 years, they've been bargaining against officials whom they then elect, as you point out. So it's completely corrupt. So if you sort of pull this back to first principles, you say, well, how can democracy work if the people that we elect, whose constitutional responsibility is to manage government, that's what a mayor or county executive or governor is supposed to do, that's their constitutional responsibility. When they come to office, they are bound by a collective bargaining agreement that has removed all the managerial tools.
It handcuffs them, right?
Yeah, you can't hold anyone accountable. You can't allocate resources. The principal of the school can't come in and observe a teacher to see if she's doing a good job or not, except on 7 days' notice under certain conditions. You can't do any. If you try to manage anything, the union has a right to grieve it. I mean, one situation, a supervisor asked someone to straighten out the name tag on their desk. And he filed a legal grievance and had to go to a hearing.
I'll give you another one. I'm in my office as county executive in Suffolk County, right? And I walked down the hall, and I had just appointed a woman to head up our Energy and Environment Commission. And she starts hammering her frames on the wall. And some union guy walks by her office and says, "What are you doing?" I say, "I'm putting up the frames on the wall." I say, "You can't do that. The union guy has to do it." I kid you not, Philip Howard.
Right. So you have these crazy, this crazy restriction. So literally democracy can't work. And then when the contract comes up for renegotiation, let's say 2 years into the mayor's term or whatever, in New York, if the mayor doesn't like the terms of it, under New York law, the contract remains in place with all cost of living increases in place indefinitely for 1,000 years. So he has no ability to renegotiate it. And if they're Democrats, they don't want to renegotiate it because it turns out that the unions were the biggest financial contributors to their campaign.
Yeah. Now, you postulate that this abdication of responsibility by the lawmakers, or almost a punting to the union, constitutes a violation of a very specific clause of the Constitution, the Guarantee Clause, which very few lay people out there even know about. Can you extrapolate on that?
Sure. So the Guarantee Clause, first of all, let me just, full disclosure, it's never been used in this context, so we have to make new law to win this. But the Guarantee Clause, which is in Article 4, with a very short sentence, it says, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. And what that means, which James Madison talked about during the constitutional debates, is that whoever gets elected cannot give their governing authority to any other group, any private group. That's what a Republican form of government. They have the duty to act on their best judgment for the term of office. And so Madison said you can't give it to any aristocrats or, to quote, any favored class. So
now,
what's happened?
Good.
Yeah. So what's happened with unions, the right of collective bargaining, is that the unions have gotten the key governing tools of executives. Who's good at their job, who's not, how do you allocate resources, how do you be efficient, how do you adapt to these new circumstances? The whole idea of management is making all these changes to make government work well.
Yeah.
And literally the union, you can't do any of that.
It's especially true what I saw with the concept of mandatory arbitration, where the police union and the county executive will sit down and try to hash something out. And, the union wants too much, the county executive wants some givebacks, and it gets punted by law to an independent arbitrator who will now make the decision that is final and binding on not only this county executive, but all future county executives and county legislators. And that's where you come in saying you should not be able to do that under the Guarantee Clause, correct?
Right. So when the New York collective bargaining law, it's called the Taylor Law, was written in 1967, there was a special commission run by some guy named George Taylor, who was a labor law professor. And one of the things that Taylor said is, in passing this law, one thing you can never do is have disputes on negotiation be resolved by arbitrators. Mm-hmm. Because under the Guarantee Clause and under basic principles of non-delegation, the legislature or some elected official has to make those decisions.
Who's accountable to the public, right?
Yeah, nobody elected the arbitrators to
Right.
decide what the wages you're paying the Suffolk police. Somebody who was elected is supposed to decide that, right?
Yeah.
So that's clearly unconstitutional. I mean, it's like not even, I mean, the people who wrote the law said it was unconstitutional.
Well, it's interesting because I think that's the very reason that, you know, people get shocked when folks like you and I tell the average person is that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who is considered the labor president, and George Meany, you know, the big union guru in the private sector, both agreed that you should not be able to have collective bargaining in the government sector because then it becomes government negotiating against itself. Am I right?
Right. Yes, completely. And
30 seconds.
And the harm of it, we see happening. You know, and so after 50 years, you have unmanageable government.
Right.
You have officials giving pension benefits and overtime benefits that are opaque to the public, and they're paid for in the future.
Well, we want to talk about that in the next segment, the extent to which this is crippling taxpayers on the local, state, and federal level. So stay with us, folks. On the Right Side podcast, we'll be back in 2 minutes with our very special guest host here today, Philip Howard from The Common Good. We'll be right back.
Most people think they have options when searching for the best deals when they travel. But here's the shocking truth. 100% of the major travel agencies are owned by just two entities, Expedia and Booking Holdings. They claim to offer the lowest rates, but due to the hotel rate parity agreement, they all have the same pricing, limiting genuine competition. When you book through these sites, you act as your own travel agent, but the profits are going to organizations that don't support our patriot values. We cannot allow that to continue. So, we decided to make travel great again by starting a US-based travel membership platform, mypatriottravel.com. We are patriots helping patriots. Together, we can disrupt the travel industry by not spending our hard-earned dollars supporting the radical left. For just $29.99 per month, you gain access to true wholesale rates on travel, saving you on average 35% and up to 65%. Book as often as you like, with no limits. Keep your hard-earned dollars in your pocket and spend them on things you need and want to support. Go to mypatriottravel.com/TAFW and grab your membership today. mypatriottravel.com/TAFW, making travel great again.
Are you a true American? Then it's time to get connected. Download the America First Media and Television app and stay up to date with real news, bold voices, and live events from the America First Warehouse. From national broadcasts and exclusive shows to comedy nights, concerts, and special events. It's all right at your fingertips. No filters, no spin, just America First. Download the America First Media and Television app today and be part of the movement.
I'm sure you guys remember the platinum single Justice for All with Donald Trump and the J6 Prison Choir. We'll get ready for round two. We're coming out with Anthem of the Free with High Res and the J6 Prison Choir. It's coming out now. It's pre-sale until December 19th when it drops. Get yours on all platforms, Google Play, Apple iTunes. Get it. It's going to be hot.
Justice for all, our voices ring. The anthem of the free.
It's me, Joe the Box, the America First Warehouse, most patriotic venue in all the land.
The America First Warehouse, a beacon for all to see, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall and free. In the America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be.
Hey, we're back, folks. On the Right Side podcast, I'm your host every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Steve Levy. I'm the former Suffolk County Executive, New York State Assemblyman, and presently serve as the Executive Director of the think tank Center for Cost-Effective Government. And the fellow who just came in next to me on my left here, not necessarily political left, is John Rainey, who is now a researcher for our Center for Cost-Effective Government. And Philip knows John as well, because John's doing some research for Philip's upcoming book, and big legal extravaganzas coming up in the future. So welcome, John. And now that I have you back, Philip Howard from Common Good. In the first segment, we talked about how our Center for Cost-Effective Government and Common Good are both going in parallel directions here to try to get a court of law to invalidate this crazy concept of unions, municipal unions, giving cash, giving money, political donations to elected officials who are going to negotiate their contracts. Now, if you did that in the private sector, folks, you'd be led away in handcuffs because it is illegal. But in the public sector, it's perfectly fine. So I wanted to tell you, Philip Howard, one of the things that I'm looking at on my end, you had talked about going it from the angle from the guarantee clause. I'm looking at it from the due process clause. And I came across, as you well know about this case, it was a Supreme Court case in 2009 in West Virginia. It was called Caperton versus Massey Cole. And in that case, could we put up the asset here, guys, or a quote from the court? This was a case where the court overturned a case where one of the judges making the decision got his political donations from the one of the parties in the litigation. And they basically said, boy, it's so crunched, it's too small for me to read over there, but it basically said that it was a violation of the due process rights of those litigants when the opposing litigant had given money to the judge. So we say, well, if that's a conflict of interest, is it an equal conflict of interest and violation of due process for taxpayers to be put at a disadvantage when the elected officials supposedly representing them are taking money from the union? Yeah. You think it's a viable possibility here, Philip Howard?
Yeah, absolutely. We're pursuing it. It's a parallel argument. The Caperton case relied on the fact that it was, quote, a judicial proceeding and all that, and we're talking about, kind of elected proceedings, which are a little less persnickety than a judicial proceeding. But it's basically the same idea, which is that if you're electing someone to run government for the public good, and their job is to manage the employees, that is their job. To run, and they're taking money from those public employees. And then they sit down with those public employees, supposedly on the other side of the table, but in fact they're on the same side of the table. Yep. So the issue in these negotiations is not a real bargaining session. The issue is, what can we get away with and not get in trouble with the public? It's not about doing what's right for the public.
Hey, John Rainey, do you think there's any possibility that legislators will vote to limit their abilities to take money from the unions that feed their elections?
Well, the thing is, in the research I've done both for the Center for Cost-Effective Government and for Common Good, one thing that keeps on coming up over and over again is this pattern of elected people elected to govern, that should have the right to exercise the powers they were elected to exercise, are just totally unable to. And there is often a fight sometimes, I have actually in my coming research package to you this week, Mr. Howard, I've got something where they attempted to expand their rights, but despite lobbying and repeated judicial attempts, it was rebuffed. This is to expand the external arbitration to another set of public workers. This was to probation officers who aren't currently covered by it. And they wanted to expand that further, like police and firemen. And there was actually a direct fight. And despite money changing hands, that was rebuffed, as far as I could tell.
Well, with all the research, Philip, that John is doing and you continue to do for your upcoming book, do you see a path toward litigation here that will have plaintiffs ready to present this case and see if we can run it all the way up the chain, possibly to the Supreme Court, and create some landmark changes here in America?
Definitely. I mean, we already have a draft complaint that is about 80% done. That's styled against the state of Illinois, which is probably the heart of the beast. But we need to do a separate complaint for New York State, because the laws are a little different. And for example, that arbitration clause that you mentioned is so clearly unconstitutional
Right.
in New York. And these evergreen clauses are so clearly unconstitutional. So, and the thing that we need, though, is that we could really use an elected mayor or
Right.
county executive who's willing to sign on to the complaint. And
they're
willing
often,
to be,
they're
that would be
often very
really good.
reticent to do so because they rely on the mother's milk of politics, which are those union donations. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, but there must be somebody somewhere who's
I'm
not
sure there
beholden
is.
to the union, and upstate New York maybe, or Suffolk County for that matter. It would clearly be a Republican, because the Democrats were truly in the pocket
yeah.
No.
of the unions.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned Illinois. I read something there where the latest tax increase in Illinois, 95% of the tax increase went to fund pension obligations. Illinois has the worst pension fiscal cliff awaiting. California is right behind, as are, most of the blue states. And it's only going to get worse unless we can clamp down on this. Philip, in the 4 minutes we have left, tell us about your book, some of your upcoming events, and what the public out there can do to support what you are seeking to do on their behalf.
Yeah, I think that. Thank you, Steve. I think that what you're doing too is so important. I think that America is sort of getting close to a turning point. I think Trump's election was clearly a signal that people know that the system is broken, and Trump has disrupted things, but he doesn't really have, in my view, a vision of how government will work better the day after Doge or whatever. So one of the things that we're doing is that we're, in addition to organizing this constitutional challenge to union controls, we're also trying to get people in the mood for completely replacing the status quo in government. I mean, there's nothing that works. You can't fix a broken school. You can't modernize infrastructure. I'm organizing a series for the Free Press, which is Barry Weiss's online news outlet. I'm organizing a series on the need to reboot government, and I have all these important, smart experts in different areas signed up. Former Governor Mitch Daniels is writing about the need to manage government. Former General H.R. McMaster about fixing procurement. The former New York Schools Chancellor Joel Klein talking about the importance of school choice and how if we really want schools to work, we've got to give parents many more options, because the public schools, because of the unions, are hopeless. So we're going to try to get, and then Steve, I want to talk to you about possibility of creating a kind of a committee of committees where you have groups like yours and ours and others, but we combine it into a national civic organization.
Excellent.
To kind of remake the operating systems of government.
I love that, Philip.
It's like the red tape state.
I love it. Locally, what I've been doing, I've been helping to champion, along with a lot of other rebels out here who think that the present system is out of control. We're trying to create a consolidation of all the disparate groups out there who are sick and tired of the teachers' unions controlling our schools, both from a cost perspective, a lack of choice, the wokeness, all of the anti-Americanism there. And we're trying to bring them all together onto one website so that when people, the average voter, who's pretty much a lazy voter when it comes to school boards, don't know who's who, we want them to go to our website and say, this is the candidate who will support taxpayers and is not in the pocket of the union. So I think
Right.
your idea of bringing all the, and there's a ton of groups out there, but they're all doing their own thing. We need to consolidate them, right, John?
From all the people I've interviewed, especially locally, there is the spirit, like the desire is there. You know, decision makers are thinking about this in a way that implies forward motion. And tomorrow I'm going to Long Island Legislative Conference where Lilota and the county executive are both going to be. I'm going to hope to, get them talking about this sort of thing. So, opportunities are
Will be good.
opening. The spirit is there.
Well, we've got to stay out there, visible, and let the average taxpayer know that there's a place to go. In the final 30 seconds here, Philip, do you have a website, or is there a place that people can contact you?
Commongood.org. You can sign up for our newsletter. It's free. There's no money required. And we're really interested in building something big. And I think one of the things that John has been helping us with is we're working on a white paper on what happens what's the cost when you can't manage government.
Right.
And I think we're talking about trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
trillions. So I think this is something that maybe can excite taxpayers.
Well, we're excited talking about it. We're excited talking to you, Philip Howard. We thank you for taking the time from your very busy schedule to enlighten our viewership here in a couple of segments we had. We wish you Godspeed with your venture, and we're happy to be your partner. Thank you again for being with us, Philip Howard from Common Good.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be back in 3 minutes here on the Right Side broadcast from Long Island, New York. Be right back.
You've worked hard and saved, but inflation and increased money supply are eroding your buying power. Protect and grow your wealth with physical gold and silver. Sound Money. With a Sound Money wallet, your wealth stays in your control. Buy fractionally, vault securely, ship directly, and instantly liquidate your gold and silver at the highest buyback price in the industry. Real money, real ownership. Visit tafwsoundmoney.info or scan the QR code and start securing your financial future today.
The America First Ultra MAGA store. For all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Ultra MAGA store.
How's it going, y'all? I'm Bill Clinton. Now instead of a poke, you're getting a smack! What have I done?
Bookman, you're up.
It's ma'am. I can't just, tell you this stuff.
I got hairy legs. They turn blonde in the summer.
Because we're gonna treat you like family.
I'm pretty sure I'm a woman.
No, you're not, Steve. Oh!
Do you like camping? The entire city is your campground.
There is no law. Anything goes. It's a Diddy cruise.
Corporate transfer. Fine professional, moving and storage, and inventory management.
America First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
The America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be.
Hey, folks, welcome back on the Right Side podcast. We're here out of the America First Warehouse every Wednesday at 2 o'clock live. I'm your co-host, Steve Levy. I'm former Suffolk County Executive, New York State Assembly member, and the president and CEO of the think tank Center for Cost-Effective Government. A researcher for our think tank is my guest host today, John
How's it going?
Rainey. John, thank you very much for being back.
Great to be here as always.
Thanks. So you're standing in. I don't know if I should say you're better looking than David Zare, a regular guy. He'll get offended. But David is amazing. He's from Real America's Voices on assignment. And John steps in wherever we need him. So thank you. Okay, you just may have heard us with Philip Howard from Common Good, where his organization and our organization are trying to stop the madness where unions are giving money to elected officials who negotiate their contracts. We think it's unconstitutional, and we're fighting it in the courts. But I want to segue in this segment to one of my other favorite topics, John Rainey, media bias. I actually wrote a book in 2012 called Bias in the Media. I was a Democrat for most of my political life, and the media treated me one way. And when I got fed up with the extremism of the Democrats, even back then in 2010, and became a Republican, everything changed. The subtitle is How the Media Switched Against Me When I Switched Parties. And it is a brutally, brutally biased media. And we saw a number of examples of it this week. I'm going to talk about the way some of the media covered this attempted bombing in New York City. Tell us give us a little background on how crazy that was with the protesters and the jihadists who were trying to kill people.
I mean, there's no better example, a caricature if I wanted to draw one, was that guy. He was screaming up front in that protest. He's like, everybody's welcome here. ICE out, all these things. And then all of a sudden...
He was a lefty Marxist.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this guy basically jumps over his back and uses him as a launching pad to throw a bomb while screaming Allahu Akbar.
And by the way, the audacity of some of the leftist media, they were actually trying to make it sound like it was a bomb thrown at Mayor Mamdani because he was Muslim. And then you have to look a little further and say, wait a minute, it was a protest that was out there by this very right-of-center group, not a very attractive group in my mind. Okay, they're way over the top, but they have a constitutional right to be out there and protest and say whatever they want.
Then there is that left-wing counter-protester who's like, I condemn you people, you're not really Americans.
So it was the Marxist jihadist counter-protest that was protesting the right-wing folks, and it's the Muslim extremists that threw these homemade bombs that thankfully did not detonate. But I want to show, let's get that asset up there from CNN.
Oh my goodness.
This is how CNN described this event. Oh boy, I should learn my lesson because these things are so far away, you can't even read them. I got to do it from my computer.
I remember what the headline was. It was their lives were changed forever as they tried to bomb a protest.
Oh, here we are. I can see it clearly here. 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day, enjoying the city, enjoying abnormally warm weather, blah, blah, blah. But then their lives suddenly changed. Oh, coincidentally, their lives changed, right? No, they, with malice aforethought, created these bombs for the purpose of killing more people than what you saw in the Boston Marathon. It is a sick, disgusting, left-wing media that now, in my mind, you only have to use the word corrupt because they're on Team Blue and they're going to do everything they can to denigrate this country. And it's scary.
Yeah.
Now, you want to see another example of media bias. We have a local paper here in Newsday, a big brouhaha over a video, where the leftist, the illegal immigration lobby, works very closely with some of the reporters here, their kindred spirits, and they try to make ICE look bad, anyone for law enforcement enforcing immigration looking bad, and they try to make the illegal immigrant always looked like the good guy, victim, underdog. So there was a case here where the ICE agents were trying to arrest this guy who was here illegally. And the guy is, of course, resisting arrest. Do we have a video of this? So Newsday, are you guys ready to play it? Okay, let's show this video, okay? Newsday making the claim that ICE people rammed his head into a wall.
5th, a bystander captured this cell phone video of Isai Santos Caceres pleading for his safety as ICE agents detained him on Henry Street in Hempstead. During the struggle, Caceres' head slams into a brick
Now
wall.
look, stop it there. After that, all they did was talk about how the ICE agents slammed his head into the wall. You really had to go back a number of times to see that what really happened here is they were trying to just bring him in. He's resisting. He's a heavy load. He trips the agents. They stumble into the wall, but they make it sound like they deliberately and cruelly thrusted his head into that brick wall. They said, could you show that one more time, guys? I don't know if you're able to rewind that. If you can't, no sweat. But I want people to see again.
Him on Henry Street in Hempstead. During the struggle, Caceres' head slams into a brick wall.
They didn't push him into that wall. He lost his balance. He's a heavy guy, and he drifted into that wall. But if you look at the headlines in the paper, and they go and they get the quotes from all these people, his rights were abused, they're cruel, they're unconstitutional. That's another example of media bias. It's all right to show that video, but you have to put it into proper context, and they did not.
No.
John, it's just remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people download their opinions just from what mainstream media, gets. I mean, less and less people every day, right? But that is like their strategy for the last 50 years. Bringing it back to one of my first appearances on this show, I was talking about the leftist media strategy. The seizure of the means of cultural production, the tradition of Western Marxism, and what their whole thing was. They're like, well, the working class isn't inherently communist. They're not really getting on board with it. How do we do that? How do we harness their power? It's like, oh, well, we need to change the culture. We need to change the culture factories. It's about movies, TV shows, and news coverage that alters reality. And, it's like there's that whole thing. The left can't meme. The left can't tell a good joke. Why is that? It's because good humor is based on simple observations about reality or observations about reality that ring true. And the leftist worldview is built off of a carefully constructed falsehood. It's a carefully constructed, multi-layered, propagandized version of what reality is.
It certainly was a falsehood.
And that's why there's so
many... For them to claim that these ICE agents were looking for an immigrant to just take them and throw them into a wall.
It's a small example
horrible.
Of a really big systemic problem.
Another example, our last example in this segment on media bias. Check out this headline, okay? Check out this headline. Here we go. Cuts to care for transgender youth. You know what that was about? That headline should have read, Feds Stop Child Sterilization and Mutilation. Because that's what the Trump administration did. After a number of lawsuits by some of these transgender kids who they and their parents were coaxed by the sex change operation cottage industry, that you have to get a sex change operation and get sterilized and have your breast or penis removed, or you're going to kill yourself. Okay, they felt betrayed because that they didn't really want to do it, and they felt goaded. One young person wound up winning a multi-million-dollar judgment against those doctors who did it to them, and now the studies are coming out of Europe and elsewhere that this trans surgery is crazy for kids. When you're an adult, do whatever you want with your body. So President Trump comes in and rightly says, we're not going to allow this to happen anymore, where you're chopping off the body parts of minors and sterilizing them.
back,
and that is the headline.
Yeah, that's
That
the
is the headline.
Calling
Cuts
it
to trans care.
gender-affirming care at all is already a propaganda title to begin with.
Right.
But especially in the context of children, really, at the end of the day, the most cynical of them, it's just about money, because there's a lot of money to be made in chopping people up that don't need it and then putting them on drugs forever, because then they will need it because they've been mutilated. But you know, it's like you see in these like care groups for people who are like, you know, regretting their decision. It's a nightmare, you know, and they're like, you know, it's like there was that in the documentary What Is a Woman? You had a lot of these people who were detransitioning.
Matt Walsh, I think.
Yeah, and like there were so many people who were just telling horror story after horror story because it's a violation of the Hippocratic Oath. You know, especially for children, monstrous.
But the wording, it's very Orwellian, 1984. You know, where up is down and in is out, and black is white, and freedom is oppression, and freedom is slavery. That's what they do. That's why they changed the name from illegal immigrant to illegal alien to undocumented immigrant to refugee. An asylum seeker. Play games with the words so that you normalize the abnormal. And that's what they're trying to do with these sex change operations for minors. Just call it trans care. And if you're opposed to chopping off the body parts of kids, you are against trans care.
Well,
totally
for them, there's
disgusting.
no
30
objective
seconds.
truth. It's just you say the right things, you can change reality itself. That's their position, and it's an insane and damaging position.
You know, unfortunately, it works too many times. So, folks, in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the New York State budget, and it's a microcosm of what's going on with budgets around the entire country. You're not going to want to miss this, just to show you how much waste there is in our government today. You're watching On the Right Side podcast. Steve Levy, your co-host, with guest host today, John Rainey. We'll be right back in 3 minutes.
Have you noticed your money just doesn't stretch like it used to? Your paycheck feels lighter, and your savings aren't growing. The culprits? Inflation and increased money supply. They've both been quietly eating away at your purchasing power for years. Today, the dollar's value has dropped significantly. You feel it every time you spend money on goods and services. Back in 1965, $1 or an ounce of silver could buy you a gallon of milk. Fast forward to today. That same dollar barely buys a couple of coffee creamers, while an ounce of silver would get you 8 gallons of milk. Gold and silver have held their value for centuries. If you had 2,500 ounces of silver back in 1965, you could buy a brand new Ford Mustang. Today, 2,500 ounces of silver would buy you 2 Mustangs. Similarly, in the year 2000, 628 ounces of gold would buy a new $170,000 home. Today, 628 ounces would buy you a $2,500,000 home. The problem? 95% of Americans don't own physical gold or silver. They think it's too complicated and too expensive, but it doesn't have to be. We offer a membership program that allows you to buy gold or silver with as little as $1. You can buy fractional amounts, safely vault them, or have them delivered to your doorstep, and you can liquidate them whenever you want at the highest buyback price in the industry. Ready to protect your wealth and keep your purchasing power? Scan the QR code or go to tafw.soundmoney.com to learn more.
If the vote count is accurate, then how come the number of voters is different? And if it's not accurate, then why was it certified? We are suing Letitia James and the New York State Board of Elections for a conspiracy against fundamental rights. This is not about who won, it's not about what party, it's about the fact that they don't care about your rights.
All right, live from Studio 6B on a Friday night, live at the America First Warehouse. Live at the America First Warehouse on a Friday, Real America's Voice, all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, all across your radio, Suffolk County, Long Island.
It's me, Joe the Box, and I'm John the Blanket with the America First Podcast.
That's what I'm talking about. The Fred Rubino Podcast coming to you from the America First Warehouse.
Welcome back to the America First Warehouse. We're still doing fighting
every day, all day long.
Welcome to the Patriots Podcast. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the On the Right Side podcast here at the America First Warehouse in Long Island, New York.
Shane Jenkins here with another episode of Liberty's Cage.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Red, Right, and True.
We are streaming live on America First Media and Television app.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Downey Jr. podcast. Be free, stay free.
The America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be.
Hey, folks. Steve Levy here, your host for On the Right Side podcast. We come to you every Wednesday live at 2 p.m. from the America First Warehouse. And if you want to see more of the great stuff that emanates from this mecca of patriotism here on Long Island, go to America First Marketing and TV. Also, another good spot for you to go to is soundmoney.com. You probably saw the commercial a little earlier in the break. I fortunately was convinced by some of the guys here to buy into this and get some gold. And boy, am I glad I did, because it's going through the roof with all the volatility out there. All right. Normally I have here David Zare from Real America's Voice is on assignment today. So my very frequent stand-in is John Rainey, who's a researcher at our Center for Cost-Effective Government. Welcome again, John.
It's always a pleasure.
I want to talk a bit. Maybe we'll get to Iran at the latter part of this, but got to talk about the New York State budget, because it really is a microcosm of what is happening in all the blue states throughout this nation. It is disgraceful what's going on. We have our $250 billion plus budget, which is twice the size of Florida, which has 3 million more people than does New York, and they don't even have a state income tax like we do. So what's going on now is the governor is being pushed by the lefties, the new mayor, the communist mayor, Mamdani, and the leftward flank, the socialists who are growing in tremendous power throughout New York. And they want an income tax increase, a corporate increase. Yeah. They want authority to increase taxes for the city tax rate that they have as well. Governor Hochul is saying, no, I'm not going to do that. But I remember with congestion pricing, so, I'm not going to increase your taxes right before the election. A month after election, she implemented the tax. So what's your guess here, John? Are we going to see that tax increase?
Well, it's already such a high tax state, and I think people are fleeing New York. It's in the numbers. The next census, New York's going to get butchered. California's going to go down. And the places that are going to go up are places that aren't oppressing people with taxes. One of the main balancing acts with taxes is that people can leave. They're not completely, totally chained to the place where they currently live. And people are mobile, and they do go places.
Well, now you got wealth taxes that are not income tax, but, you're wealthy. Let's say you're worth $100 million. We're just going to tax you 10% every year. That's actually a plan, in the state of Washington.
It's like people didn't learn from Detroit.
In California, they're talking about a referendum for that. And like you say, these guys can move with their feet. Yeah. But one of the things, that has to be talked about here in New York, and the power of the unions. Remember, the first half of this show was with Philip Howard and how municipal unions have such a stranglehold over the elected officials, Democrat and Republican alike in many cases. And here in New York, we wised up back in 2011. We passed legislation that created a new Tier 6. That means incoming employees that would be hired in 2012 and beyond, they would have to pay more into their pension system. They couldn't rack up all this overtime that would be factored into their pension. They'd vest later rather than an earlier retirement. And it was going to save billions going forward. So what has Hochul, the governor, and the state legislature, primarily pushed by the Democrats, with a lot of Republicans going along with this, the union is pushing them to undo those Tier 6 reforms from 13, 14 years ago. And some fiscal experts are warning it will have a $100 billion price tag on our residents. It's out of control, John Rainey.
Yeah, it really is. And in my research, once again, both for the Center for Cost-Effective Government, and for Common Good, it's a theme. It's a pattern. When finally a cost-saving measure of some sort is passed to lift the burden from the shoulders of the average person, they will go after the reform and try to reverse it, no matter the cost. And oftentimes these are bills in the millions and millions of dollars, or in the statewide case, something like that would be billions. It's catastrophic amounts of cost, and it's the system relies on balance, and there is a lack of balance.
Well, speaking of unaffordability, the same folks now, particularly the Democrats who are talking about affordability all the time, are the same people who passed legislation in 2019 in New York State for climate remediation that is now been certified to cost ratepayers in New York a 50% increase since it was implemented in 2019. But John Rainey from the Center for Cost-Effective Government, a leaked memo came out from NYSERDA, one of the energy groups, saying, guess what? Hold on to your hat, because if this program continues to go forward, the present law in its present course, it's going to be an increase of thousands of dollars per year from your present cost for your electric rates. And in upstate New York, they may pay $4,000 more a year for their electric. More per year, okay? This is how obscene it is. And there's a movement by the business community and regular normal people say, hey, slow down, push it off for years so we can get our hands around it. But the crazies on the left are fighting it. So that's another one.
Yeah.
Is that going to pass in this budget?
I mean, I think anyone who's paying attention, like in a governmental capacity, wouldn't let this pass because, like I said, people are already being wrung dry, and even people who have lived in New York for decades are uprooting themselves and moving just to get away from it. People can move. I know they just
and
it's
it's
this
not
thing they keep on. They always forget this.
Yeah, it's not just taxes; it's electric rates too.
Yeah.
And it's clear that if you look at blue states versus red states, blue state cost for energy and electricity far greater. So it's not a national thing. It's not from national markets. It's what the policymakers in the blue states are doing to inflict this pain on Americans.
When people move, money moves and jobs move, which attracts more people to move. It's a power vacuum,
Well, speaking of energy costs, hey, we're coming to the folks here live at a point where this Iranian conflict is going on. And because of it, the Strait of Hormuz is under turmoil. So barrels of oil are going through the roof, and people are starting to worry. But I'm hearing these people, we got to stop this incursion because oil prices are up. I remember the Democrats wanting oil prices to go up. Tap and trade, taxes on gasoline, because the higher those gas prices are, the less people will use of the fossil fuels, and they'll go to alternatives like electric and stuff. Now, all of a sudden, the price is going up, presumably to stop Iranians from nuking us in New York City and Washington, D.C., but now increases in gas costs are a bad thing. When Biden did it, it happened under his tenure on purpose, it's fine. But now when it's being done to stop a nuclear attack from Iranians, this is terrible. It's not affordable. The hypocrisy, right?
Well, the oil increases with the Strait of Hormuz. It's just that the Strait of Hormuz passes so much oil through it. Right?
Yep.
And Iranians have been trying. They announced its closure, but ships are still kind of moving. It's all just really uncertain. Market forces right now are driving up the cost. It's not necessarily we're raising the price to take a dig at the Iranians. It's more that stuff's happening on a really important shipping channel.
It's the uncertainty.
Yeah,
Right,
and
right.
so I mean, there was also that the insurance thing.
Right.
Lloyd's of London said we're not going to insure any oil going through the Strait of Hormuz anymore, and that was supposed to be a big dig at American power, being like, oh look, the Americans can't handle this. We're not going to insure it. It's going to look terrible for Trump. But then America said, well,
we'll insure.
we're going to insure it,
By
and
the
that's
way,
a huge dig at Lloyd's.
Hey, John Rainey, speaking of England, I'm shocked. They're no longer our number one ally. Starmer is a socialist, number one, so that's bad enough. But it's also apparent that the left now in a lot of these nations, whether it's France or in England, They are captive
Yeah.
of the huge Muslim immigrant population that they brought in. So here you have Starmer saying, we're not going to help you. We're not giving you, Spain, he's another he's a socialist Marxist. We're not giving you airspace. What is going on? Look, it's pretty clear now. Our number one ally in the world is Israel. Not only from a common bond, but when it comes pedal to the metal, these guys have probably, after China, the third most powerful military in the world. They're amazing, but we're simpatico with them as far as a liberal democracy trying to fight Islamofascism. But here are our European allies who are now co-opted by the immense Muslim immigration into their country. And England is now saying, no, we're not helping you. Unbelievable. I never thought I'd see the day.
Living in the United Kingdom, for your average British person is, in terms of rights, in terms of just quality of life, has been a long decline. It's just a living nightmare. More people are arrested for speech in the United Kingdom that have been arrested in the last year
30 a day.
than were arrested during Brezhnev's entire administration in the USSR.
Crazy.
It's something terrible is happening. But there is hope. In the UK, they're going to have their elections. There are two parties. It looks like the Tories, the Conservatives, aren't ever going to be in government again. Because they
split.
They didn't.
They split their vote all the time.
They didn't rule like Conservatives. They didn't do anything that they promised to. They were just Labour, but different. And the only reason Labour got in was because Conservatives weren't conservative. So you had Reform. And then Reform was like, oh, we're going to have mass deportations, we're going to fix things. And now Reform is beginning to back off on it. So you have another party, which is stealing Reform's thunder, called
That's what I mean.
called Restore.
The conservative element is split their vote, while the socialists, who are not very popular, would just win with a plurality.
Well, because of their parliamentary system, there's hope for for parties like Restore to come to power, and I think that there's a groundswell.
And you got to form your coalition.
Prayers for the Anglosphere, prayers for the UK, prayers for Canada. It's all very bad over there.
For liberal democracies and common sense, and not have us becoming more like Red China, but these other countries around the world becoming more like what we used to be here in America. Hey, on that note, folks, we're so happy you joined us on The Right Side. We'll see you next week, Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Have a great week.
Cross Warehouse, a beacon for all to see, a symbol of hope, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall and free in the America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be. The America First Warehouse, a beacon for all to see, a symbol of hope, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall